Welcome to this explainer. Look, if there is one universal financial fear that unites pretty much all of us, it's the profound fear of running out of money in retirement. I mean, think about it. You work for decades, you save diligently, but that actual transition from earning a predictable paycheck to living off your accumulated savings, it can feel a bit like stepping off a cliff in the dark. So today, we're going to tackle that fear head-on by unpacking one of the most famous strategies in personal finance to help make sure your retirement savings actually last.
So let's dive right in by asking the exact high-stakes question that every future retiree loses sleep over. How much can you actually spend without your accounts draining to zero? It's this massive lifelong balancing act. If you withdraw too much too quickly, you risk outliving your money. But on the flip side, if you withdraw too little out of fear, you unnecessarily deprive yourself of the comfortable lifestyle you worked so incredibly hard for. We need a reliable framework.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, the 4% rule. Then, the Trinity study origins, applying the math, managing your portfolio, the benefits and limitations, and finally, tailoring your strategy.
Let's start with Section 1, the 4% rule, the foundation of retirement withdrawals.
Okay, so at its core, the 4% rule is essentially a guideline. It suggests that retirees can comfortably withdraw 4% of their total retirement savings in their first year of retirement, and then simply adjust that specific dollar amount for inflation every year after that. What's great about this is that it outlines an exact mechanism meant to balance a steady, reliable income stream with the long-term preservation of your total portfolio. It gives you a mathematical anchor, so you aren't just out there guessing how much you can afford to live on.
Moving right along to Section 2, the Trinity study origins, or where exactly did this number come from?
Well, this rule isn't just a random guess. It's built on some really rigorous historical testing. Back in 1994, a financial planner named William Bengen formulated this framework, which you'll often hear discussed alongside similar research called the Trinity study. He did this by meticulously analyzing 3 decades of historical stock and bond returns. He literally looked back at the market crashes, the booms, the periods of high inflation, the recessions, the whole shebang, and he found that a 4% initial withdrawal rate would have successfully sustained a retiree's portfolio through a 30-year period across almost every single historical market environment. That 30-year historical endurance best, that's what gives us the confident year 1 starting point for your own retirement.
Section 3. Applying the math and calculating your withdrawals.
Let's actually play out a scenario so we can see how this works. Imagine it's day 1 of your retirement. Congratulations! You log into your accounts, and boom, you have exactly $1 million saved up. That is your total nest egg. Following the very first step of the rule, you take that $1 million and you withdraw exactly 4%. Doing that unlocks $40,000 for your very first year. That 40 grand becomes your baseline income. Based on Bengen's historical data, this is the safe amount you can extract to live your life without jeopardizing your financial future.
But here is where the rule really shows its value. You don't just take $40,000 every single year, because as we all painfully know, things get more expensive over time. So if inflation hits 2% the following year, you simply adjust that previous withdrawal amount up to $40,800. This ensures you confidently maintain your purchasing power. If inflation spikes to 5% the year after that, you bump your withdrawal up by 5%. You're constantly protecting your standard of living against the silent tax of inflation.
So, just to quickly recap that process, it's really just 2 simple steps. First, the initial calculation to find 4% of your total savings. And second, adjusting for inflation annually. That forms your actionable checklist. It's a system designed specifically to protect your hard-earned income from the inevitable rising costs of groceries, healthcare, housing, you name it, providing you with a predictable paycheck throughout your golden years.
All right, Section 4, managing your portfolio to get the right mix of assets.
Now, this whole strategy relies on a pretty massive underlying assumption. The historical math only works if you maintain a specific required balancing act, 50 to 75% of your portfolio in stocks, with the remaining 25 to 50% in bonds. This specific allocation perfectly aligns with Bengen's historical data. The stocks provide that necessary growth engine to outpace inflation over 30 years, while the bonds, they act as your steady anchor to help you weather turbulent stock market crashes without being forced to sell off your shares at a massive loss.
Because of that, a really crucial point is that you absolutely have to regularly manage and rebalance this portfolio to ensure it continues to match the rules formulation. Over time, as your stocks grow, they might inflate to, say, 85% of your portfolio, throwing your risk profile completely out of whack. Regular rebalancing basically forces you to trim your winners and buy more of your underperforming assets, keeping your investments strictly aligned with your risk tolerance and that mathematical foundation we just talked about.
Which brings us to Section 5, Benefits and Limitations, the reality check.
When we actually pit the straightforward simplicity of this rule against, well, real-world human variables, we start to see a few cracks in a rigid system. The benefits are for sure fantastic. It's incredibly simple to understand, simple to implement, and historically it has shown really impressive 30-year sustainability. But the real world is messy. It's filled with unpredictable market conditions, high inflation rates, the very real risk of living longer than expected, and a distinct lack of spending flexibility.
Let's dig into those limitations for a second. First off, future market conditions can deviate drastically from history. Just because it worked in the past absolutely does not guarantee it will survive an unprecedented future economic crisis. Second, prolonged periods of excessively high inflation can severely challenge the sustainability of withdrawing larger and larger sums of money each year. Third, there's longevity risk. What if you joyfully live to be 100? Living significantly longer than 30 years requires major adjustments since the rule was only tested for a third-decade window. And finally, a flat percentage rule just doesn't account for reality. Most retirees spend way more in their active, early years, traveling, picking up hobbies, and then spend much less in their later years. A rigid rule ignores this deeply human need for a dynamic, flexible withdrawal strategy.
Finally, Section 6, Tailoring your strategy and making it your own. As the source material perfectly puts it, while it offers a solid starting point, it's important to consider individual circumstances, market conditions, and potential adjustments. I mean, that captures the essence of the 4% rule right there. It should never exist in a vacuum. It's a guideline, it's a rule of thumb, but it's definitely not an unbreakable law of physics.
And that's exactly why consulting a financial professional is highly recommended to tailor this rule to your specific needs. Working with an advisor can help you safely customize this historical math to fit your unique life events, your health, your legacy goals, and of course, real-time market data. They can help you craft a truly secure and dynamic retirement plan. Maybe your safest initial withdrawal rate is actually 3.5%. Or, hey, perhaps your specific pension situation means you can safely withdraw 5%.
So ultimately, I'll leave you with this question to chew on. Is the 4% rule your absolute blueprint, or is it just your starting point? I highly encourage you to take these insights, sit down, look at your own financial numbers, and actively start planning a strategy that works uniquely for you. It's an incredible foundation, but the house you build on it is entirely yours to design. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.